Welcome back, everyone, to the Wisdom of Laozi.
Great to be back.
We are continuing our journey through the Ching. And last time, chapter 33, well, it gave us a pretty profound and, I'd say, radical challenge.
It really did. Laozi kind of sparked this revolution in our values, didn't he? Telling us that, true wisdom isn't really about knowing others, but knowing yourself.
Exactly. And true power isn't overcoming others, it's overcoming yourself.
That was the ultimate inward turn, like you said. I mean, in a world that's constantly pushing us to conquer the outside, win the competition, get more stuff, more status, just says stop.
Yeah, just stop. Return to yourself. The answer's right there.
And that wisdom, at least in theory, it feels incredibly liberating. It gives us permission to sort of step back and redefine what success even means away from all that frantic scorekeeping society loves.
Right. And yet, and this is where it gets tricky, as we actually try to practice that wisdom, achieve real humility, let go of the ego, this deeper confusion starts bubbling up. It's like, why is humility so agonizingly hard?
The paradox of the accomplished self. It really is. We all talk about self-awareness, not being arrogant. But then when you actually do something remarkable, maybe you finish some grueling project at work or you build something complex, achieve something really significant, that feeling, that almost instinctive craving for someone to notice, for acknowledgement, it just surges up, doesn't it?
Totally. And even if you manage to put on a good show of modesty on the outside,
right,
internally, there's often that little voice whispering, yeah, but I did that. I'm kind of special. I get things done.
Exactly. And here's where the intellectual friction really kicks in. If you look at genuinely great figures in history, profound thinkers, brilliant artists, innovators who changed the world, they must have had an intense sense of self.
They had to. They knew what they were doing. They knew its value.
Isn't that the very self-knowledge that Chapter 33 was praising? How does that strong inner conviction square with the kind of humility that means not seeing oneself as great?
Are they just doomed to be enemies? Achievement and humility, it feels like it sometimes.
It's a critical question, honestly. And it's not just a personal struggle, is it? It plays out in leadership and society, even like geopolitics.
How so?
Well, think about it. Should a truly capable leader, or maybe even a powerful nation, constantly display its strength, broadcast its capabilities?
Or should it hide its light?
Right. If some powerful entity genuinely never sees itself as great, will the rest of the world just mistake that for weakness? Will it get pushed around, marginalized in the real-world game of power, where, let's face it, strength is often about declaration and possession?
So, okay, the fundamental question we really need to tackle is there a way in this universe for achievement and humility to stop being opposites? What does true greatness actually look like?
Is it something you achieve by declaring it, by owning it, by making sure everyone sees your name on it?
Or is there another way, a way of becoming great that maybe we haven't fully grasped? A greatness achieved not through puffing yourself up, but through some kind of profound self-dissolving.
And this is precisely why Chapter 34 is such a massive pivot point in the Tao Te Ching. Laozi basically stops giving us just techniques for self-improvement,
Yeah, he zooms out.
Way out. He forces us to look up, to analyze the fundamental operating system of the entire cosmos. He asks, what is the Tao?
And the answer waiting for us there is just stunning. Humility isn't the opposite of greatness. It's the only path to it.
It turns out our whole definition of greatness was probably just wrong from the start.
Wow. Okay. So today, our mission is clear. We need to decode this portrait of ultimate power that Laozi paints in Chapter 34.
We need to figure out how the Tao manages this incredible feat, to succeed in becoming great, because it never attempts itself to become great.
That's the core wisdom, right? The key that unlocks this whole puzzle about self and success.
Okay, so Chapter 34. You described it earlier as this magnificent condensed landscape scroll. I like that. It doesn't use flashy language.
No, it's all simple strokes, very unadorned, but it sketches out the Tao's personality almost.
Exactly. And it's a personality defined by, I think, three key things.
Yeah.
The Tao is universal, it's nurturing, and it's profoundly non-dominating.
Universal, nurturing, non-dominating. Got it.
And right there, front and center, is that ultimate paradoxical teaching you just quoted. It is because it never attempts itself to become great that it succeeds in becoming great.
That's the goal we're chasing. But before we get to that amazing punchline, we need to build the foundation. You mentioned earlier that for a real deep dive, we have to start with textual criticism. which I know sounds
I
technical,
can tell you, yeah.
but you insisted it's vital here for capturing Laozi's deepest meaning. Why specifically for this chapter?
Because honestly, the subtle difference between just two ancient characters in one line can shift the entire meaning. It can take it from being, a nice moral lesson about modesty to a truly revolutionary statement about existence itself. We're mostly working from the standard version, the Wang Bi text, which is the one most people know. But the older silk manuscripts found at Mawangdui, they offer some incredibly profound corrections or maybe clarifications.
Okay, so let's unpack the first big one. The critical debate around the line usually translated as lays claim to no merit.
Right. The standard Wang Bi text uses characters that mean something like does not name its merit or does not take credit for its merit.
Okay, so that sounds like a moral stance. The Tao does something amazing, but then it's modest. It doesn't boast about it.
Exactly. It practices humility, which is good, fine, but it still sort of implies the merit exists and the Tao is just choosing to keep quiet about it.
Right, it keeps the achievement, spiritually speaking, in its back pocket. It possesses the merit, just doesn't flash it around.
Precisely. It's an act of, let's say, moral discretion.
Yeah.
But the scholarly consensus now, and this is strongly backed up by those older Mawangdui texts, prefers a reading that uses a different character.
Buyumisa?
Guyu.
And that means?
It means does not possess its merit.
Whoa, okay, hold on. Not naming it is one thing. Not possessing it, that's totally different.
It's monumental, isn't it? Not claiming fame, that's modesty. Not claiming ownership of the deed itself, that's existential.
It means when the Tao acts, the achievement is just given. It's a pure gift, completely untethered from any sense of ownership or self attached to it.
Yes, a total self-dissolving from the outcome. The minute you possess the merit, you mentally sign your name to it, you internalize it as this is part of my identity, my greatness. That achievement suddenly becomes transactional. It becomes fragile. This does not possess reading, Buyu. It transforms the Tao. It's no longer just a good moral example. It becomes this cosmic, utterly selfless force.
Okay, so we're adopting that deeper, more revolutionary, does not possess reading. That feels right. What other technical points do we need to nail down before we jump into the lines themselves?
Just a couple quick ones. First, we need to confirm that the phrase forever free of desire, Hengwu Yuyu, is structurally there in the text.
Why is that one so crucial?
Because that line is the non-negotiable definition of the Tao's smallness, which we'll get to. If the Tao wasn't constantly free of desire, it would have an inner lack, an inner void.
And therefore, ambition.
Exactly. And that would completely nullify the paradox of achieving greatness without trying. Its lack of desire is its smallness.
Got it. And the last point, the link between the cosmos and us.
Yes, the essential bridge. In the oldest texts, right before Laozi states the concluding paradox, there's an explicit line that sometimes gets dropped in later versions. It says something like, this is how the sage is able to achieve his greatness.
Ah, so he makes the connection explicit.
Absolutely. Laozi makes sure we understand that the cosmic principle, the way of heaven, Tian Dao, is meant to be copied. It's the operational manual for the ethical and political principle, the way of man, Ren Dao. The sage succeeds by imitating the universe.
Perfect. Okay, with that critical groundwork laid, especially the Bozian distinction, let's walk through this portrait line by line, starting with its universality.
Okay, the portrait opens. The way is broad, reaching left as well as right. Some translations say overflowing.
Yeah, that word fancy, it suggests more than just wide, right? It feels dynamic, like movement, like a massive river at flood stage, maybe. A surging current, not just a full cup sitting there.
Exactly. It's a dynamic process. Think about gravity. It's not a thing. It's a process, a field. The speed of light is a process. Laozi is describing the operating system of reality itself, the universal flow.
It kind of resonates with modern ideas, maybe like decentralized networks or open source code, a system that's constantly moving, expanding, available everywhere.
It's a great analogy.
Uh-huh.
And the reaching left as well as right part, that defines its absolute neutrality.
Total inclusion. It goes beyond our human categories.
Completely. It transcends human dualism. Like you said, a river doesn't judge. It doesn't care if the crops on the left bank are good and the swamp on the right is bad. It just flows to both.
Yeah.
It doesn't discriminate between what we humans label right and wrong, good or evil.
The Song Dynasty scholar Su Che had a great term for this.
Yes. The non-discriminating mind, Wu Cha Biesin. Beautifully put.
But hang on a second. If the Tao provides the conditions and the energy for everything to develop, even things that lead to human suffering, like tyranny or, environmental destruction, Doesn't that neutrality become morally questionable from our perspective?
Ah, yes.
I mean, doesn't real leadership, human leadership anyway, sometimes require judging right from left and intervening?
That is the ultimate tension, isn't it? And it's the core difference between Taoism and systems that are heavily moralizing or interventionist. Laozi's argument, fundamentally, is that the moment you judge, you limit. The moment you intervene with focused, willful force, you create ripples, unintended consequences.
So the Tao just provides the basic physics, the laws of cause and effect.
Pretty much. The fundamental imminent conditions. And then it allows the myriad things, as he calls them, to act out their own nature within those laws. Its power isn't in control, it's in this radical, absolute acceptance of the flow, which paradoxically is what maintains the greatest possible overall stability and potential.
Okay. That non-interference idea leads us right into the second line, which describes the Tao as incredibly selfless character. The myriad creatures depend on it for life, yet it claims no authority. It accomplishes its task, yet lays claim to no merit.
Right. The first part claims no authority, or some read it as does not refuse, Lushi. It means the supply is just
Yeah.
infinite, unconditional. The universe doesn't send you an invoice for gravity or sunlight.
It never clocks out for a holiday.
Never. And that insight from the scholar Fu Perong is really helpful here, interpreting does not refuse as does not interfere.
That links back to the neutrality. It doesn't interfere by refusing or by controlling.
Exactly. It's the highest wisdom of enabling. The Tao sets the stage, provides the fundamental laws, the energy, and then it steps back completely, allows free development.
Like that perfect engineer analogy you used earlier, designing the internet's core infrastructure, the physics of the cables, the basic protocols, and then just letting billions of people build whatever they want on top of it.
Yes. Brilliant research papers, terrible cat memes, everything in between. The engineer doesn't write the content, they just ensure the platform works. That's the Busi part.
And then the second half of that line, the one we spent time on with the textual criticism, lays claim to no merit, or more deeply, does not possess the merit. Ooh, yeah.
Yes. The anonymous, selfless engineer who builds the entire internet and doesn't put their name on the homepage. The monumental tasks get done, but there's no signature, no claim of ownership.
This is where it really diverges from typical human behavior, isn't it?
Absolutely. Suche, again, had a great analysis of human failure here. He contrasted two pitfalls. The proud artist, who creates something wonderful but immediately needs to possess the fame, so, right? Their ego hijacks the creation.
Yeah, they sign it too big, metaphorically.
And then there's the opposite failure, the cold hermit. Someone's so afraid of ego, so afraid of attachment that they avoid creating anything significant at all just to stay pure.
Okay, two extremes.
The Tao transcends both. It achieves massively, creates everything, and yet it remains utterly pure because it completely detaches the self from the act and the outcome. That's the power of Briang.
This is leading us to a really revolutionary definition of what ultimate power even looks like, which brings us to the third line. It clothes and feeds the myriad creatures, yet lays no claim to being their master.
This is, for me, the ethical core of the chapter. And it's a direct challenge to almost every traditional power structure humans have ever devised.
Because the basic assumption everywhere is creator-nurturer equals master-owner.
Exactly. I made you, or I feed you, or I protect you. Therefore, I have the right to control you. That's the standard logic.
But Laozi's Tao, after clothing and feeding everything, after giving life itself, it voluntarily renounces the right of ownership. It refuses the title of master.
Think about human rulers throughout history. As the commentator He Shanggong pointed out, they usually operate transactionally. They give you protection, maybe some resources, but they demand loyalty, taxes, obedience in return. They take their cut.
Right, there's always an expectation of return.
But the Dao's nourishment, it's a one-way street, an unconditional gift, no strings attached, no expectation of anything back. And the Ming Dynasty Zen master Henshan King offered, I think, the most profound reason why this non-mastery is even possible.
What was his insight?
He said the Tao is not a master because it is fundamentally of one body with all things.
Ah, that's powerful. The universe is really a single interconnected organism.
Then the heart nourishing the hands isn't an act of control or mastery. It's just self-care, self-extension.
You don't master your hand. You care for it because it's part of you.
Precisely. The moment we see our team, our family, the environment, whatever, as separate objects that we need to manage or control, that's when we assert mastery, and that's where conflict arises. But the Tao operates from this place of ultimate unity. So there's only nourishment, enablement, allowing, never domination.
Wow. Okay, that completely reframes power. It shifts it away from command and towards service, self-extension, enabling.
All of those. Which brings us finally to the core paradox itself, the interplay of small and great.
Right. The text says, forever free of desire, it can be called small, yet as it lays no claim to being master when the myriad creatures turn to it, it can be called great.
Let's focus on the smallness first. The text explicitly roots it in being free of desire. Hang with you. How does that lack of desire make it appear small?
Well, if you have no desire, you have no inner void that needs filling, right? No external ambition you're chasing.
Exactly. So the Tao just it is. It doesn't assert itself. It appears invisible, maybe even bland, totally unassuming, like the air you breathe or the laws of physics just silently running the show in the background.
Wangbot had a great line about this.
Yeah, he said the Tao does nothing for things, meaning it doesn't act with specific intention towards them. Because it doesn't assert itself, it's called small. That's its phenomenal appearance, how it looks on the surface.
Okay, so that's the smallness. But its greatness isn't about physical size or loud assertion. It's found in its capacity, its character,
Mm.
especially when the myriad creatures turn to it.
Yes, when everything depends on it, when all the rivers flow into it like the ocean, which, as Yu beautifully described, accepts everything because it stays in the lowest, most humble place.
It still refuses the crown. It still doesn't claim mastery.
That's the greatness. It's not greatness of accomplishment asserted, but greatness of capacity and character revealed through non-assertion. It's essential, not phenomenal. The moment when everything relies on the Tao, and the Tao still says, I'm not your master, I don't possess you, that is the ultimate expression of greatness.
Which leads us directly, seamlessly into the final line, the ultimate teaching, the bridge back to the way of man. It is because it never attempts itself to become great that it succeeds in becoming great.
And this is the complete reversal of how we usually think about achieving greatness, isn't it?
Totally. We think greatness is a goal you actively pursue.
Right. But Laozi says greatness is a result, a byproduct. The moment you actively pursue greatness, you start trying to inflate yourself, seek titles, manage your reputation, demand validation, you actually become fragile.
Like the inflated balloon analogy you used. Looks big, but it's mostly air, easily popped.
Exactly. Easily popped by the slightest pinprick of criticism, failure, or just plain bad luck. Because its greatness depends on external perception and constant effort.
So, the sage, mirroring the Tao, just supports, enables, shines without boasting.
Yes. And by doing so, by focusing on the enabling and the nurturing, not on the self-inflation, they achieve a kind of greatness that is unshakable, sustainable, and almost inevitable. It manifests unintentionally, simply as a result of their selfless action and non-possession. It's greatness achieved through profoundly letting go of the self that wants to be great.
Okay, now that we've really unpacked the language and the core paradox, let's zoom out again. Chapter 34 feels incredibly central. You called it a system blueprint for the whole Tao Te Ching's philosophy. How does this idea of a non-possessing, non-mastering Tao fit into the bigger picture of the text?
It really functions as the cosmological justification for pretty much everything else Laozi advises. First and foremost, it massively deepens that core theme of non-possession bugyao that we see running throughout the book.
Right, chapters 2, 10, 51, they all tell the leader or the sage to give life but not possess, accomplish but not claim.
Exactly. But chapter 34 explains why you should do that. It's not just a nice ethical suggestion. It's because the fundamental operating system of the universe itself works that way. It gives a cosmic grounding for the political advice of governing through non-action. Bu wei.
And it also strongly echoes the famous water virtue, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. That overflowing fan's nature, the dynamic flow, the neutrality. It's the Tao in action, perfectly mirrored in chapter 8, where Laozi says the highest good is like water.
Because water benefits all things and does not contend.
Right. And it dwells in low places. Water's humility, its willingness to be low, that's the Tao's smallness rooted in being free of desire. Water's non-contention, its yielding nature, that's the Tao's non-mastery. Laozi uses water as this practical, observable metaphor for the abstract cosmic principle described here in 34.
And the paradox itself, smallness leading to greatness, that's classic Taoist dialectic too.
Totally. It confirms that core idea that reversal is the movement of the Tao. It links directly back to chapter 63, do the great while it is still small, or chapter 78 about the soft overcoming the hard. Chapter 34 reveals that the ultimate unshakable strength is found by operating from the position of the small, the humble, the yielding, the non-possessing.
So putting it all together, Chapter 34 really acts as the bridge. It takes the individual cultivation focus of Chapter 33, overcoming the self, and scales it up, providing the philosophical basis for the grand political grammar we see later, like in Chapter 37. It defines the ideal system.
And that ideal system isn't one that commands or controls from the top down. It's an ecosystem.
That's the perfect word for it. The ideal state, or maybe even an ideal organization or team, its function isn't to master or impose rigid rules.
No, its function is to enable, to nurture, to release potential, to provide the conditions for freedom and self-organization. It's about being an ecosystem architect, creating the environment for flourishing, mirroring that impartial, nurturing, non-mastering flow of the Tao itself.
Okay, now let's place Lao Tzu's vision on the sort of world map of philosophy. His voice, advocating this radical non-mastery, must have sounded completely countercultural, especially during the Warring States period in China. Everyone else was focused on action, on control, on strengthening the state.
Oh, it was absolutely counter-statement. You had all these thinkers proposing different ways to establish order, usually involving more structure, more defined roles, stronger control. And Laozi comes along and says basically, no, that very structure, that attempt to control and define, that's the source of the problem. That's what leads to future conflict.
How did it stack up against the main rival schools then? Let's start with Confucianism.
Well, Confucianism fundamentally requires the rectification of names, Ming, for social harmony. Roles need to be clear. The ruler must act like a ruler, the subject like a subject, father like a father, son like a son. Clear definitions and ownership create stability.
But Laozi, from this Taoist perspective, seems deeply suspicious of names and definitions.
Exactly. He fears that once names like master, owner, great leader become fixed, they inevitably solidify into structures of domination and rigidity. The Confucian ideal seeks order through clarity of relationship. The Taoist ideal seeks harmony through the erasure of the dominating aspect of relationships through that non-mastery.
Okay, so a difference in emphasis on definition. What about legalism? The tension there seems much more direct, almost like philosophical war, as you said.
It's total opposition. Legalism is built entirely on the principles of control, strict laws, administrative techniques, and centralized power to maintain social order at all costs. The whole non-mastery ethic of Chapter 34 is just antithetical to legalist thinking.
Legalists want to force predictability and obedience.
Right. Whereas the Tao embraces neutrality, non-interference, trusting in the self-regulating flow of that broad overflowing path where things can reach left as well as right. It's complete opposites in terms of how you achieve stability.
Now, moving beyond ancient China for a moment, comparing the Tao to how ultimate reality is often conceived in the West, particularly in the Abrahamic traditions, the idea of a personal God. That comparison really helps clarify the Tao's uniqueness, doesn't it? Especially on a cosmological level.
It does. And this is where Professor Liu Xiaogan's concept of the weak determinism of the Tao is just brilliant.
Weak determinism. Explain that a bit.
Okay, so the Tao does determine the world in a sense, but its determinism is weak. It's elastic, it's gentle, it's indirect. The determinism is in the fundamental laws or principles. Water flows downhill, fire burns, things follow patterns of cause and effect. But the specific outcome of how those laws play out is left open to the myriad things themselves. It sets the boundaries, but allows freedom within them.
And the most vivid way to capture this difference is that analogy you mentioned, the riverbed versus railroad tracks.
Exactly. Often, the Western model of ultimate reality, particularly a personal God acting with will, can feel like rigid railroad tracks. God intervenes directly, issues specific commandments, has a definite plan, determines the exact path. It's strong, willful intervention. The ultimate reality designs the train and dictates the precise itinerary.
Okay, direct and controlling. But the Tao.
The Tao is the broad riverbed. It provides the general direction, the overall container, the banks, the laws of gravity, the principles of flow. But the water within that riverbed, it's free to reach left as well as right. It can be turbulent in one spot, slow in another, form eddies, carve new channels over time. The Tao provides the fundamental conditions, the container, but allows incredible freedom and flexibility within that structure.
That really highlights the essential differences, especially concerning two key aspects, emotion and ownership.
Right. The Tao, as described in Chapter 34, is fundamentally an impersonal principle. It's forever free of desire, it's dispassionate, it's neutral, whereas a personal God is typically characterized by clear emotion. Love, wrath, jealousy, compassion.
And the guidance style is different too.
Completely. The Tao's guidance is indirect, weak, non-interfering. It enables rather than commands, whereas a personal God often exercises direct, strong mastery through commandments, interventions, miracles.
And finally, we circle back to the absolute core of Chapter 34, that crucial distinction about ownership. This feels like the ultimate takeaway when comparing.
It is. The Tao generates but does not possess. It creates and nurtures everything, but then, crucially, it voluntarily renounces mastery and ownership over its creation. Boyum.
Whereas the personal God, in many traditions,
Creates and owns. The world is often seen as his property, his creation, subject to his will and judgment. Laozi's stance, this radical renunciation of the right to ownership by the ultimate power itself, provides a completely different blueprint. It's a blueprint for a non-tyrannical, non-possessive way of living, leading, and relating to the world.
okay, so this ancient wisdom, this blueprint,
Yeah.
it feels incredibly relevant today, maybe more than ever. If the Tao is the perfect model, then the modern leader, maybe in business, politics, or even just within a family or community, needs to fundamentally shift their role away from being the master.
And towards being the enabler, or maybe the ecosystem architect.
I like ecosystem architect. How does that leader emulate the Tao?
They have to embody that three-knot spirit we saw in the chapter, but in their management or leadership style. First, they do not refuse,
Mm-hmm.
meaning they provide the necessary resources, they take responsibility for the overall health and conditions of the system, they ensure the nourishment is there.
Okay, provide the conditions. Second.
Second, they do not possess Buddhism. This is huge. They never hoard credit for successes. They actively push recognition and ownership out to the team members. They celebrate collective achievement, not their personal genius.
That takes real security in oneself.
It does. And third, they do not act as master. Buizing. They refuse to micromanage. They avoid imposing rigid top-down control. They trust their team.
So the enabler leader, the ecosystem architect,
Yeah.
they clothe and feed the team by providing what? Psychological safety, the right tools, trust.
Exactly. All of the above. They create the safe, fertile ground, provide the necessary resources, and then they trust the team members to reach left as well as right, to figure things out, to innovate, to self-organize within that supportive structure.
And when success inevitably comes to that kind of team,
The enabler leader is happy to be called small. They deflect the glory, they point to the team. And that is the ultimate sustainable leadership model. The traditional master leader, by contrast, the one who's always attempting to become great themselves,
they're fragile.
they're fragile, they're rigid, the relationship with the team is purely transactional, and they often create dependent, brittle organizations that can't adapt. The enabler builds the environment for collective, resilient, durable greatness.
Now, that Taoist principle of reversal filian zidong, it cuts both ways. If never attempting to become great is the path to greatness.
Then the flip side is also true. The moment you start becoming arrogant, the moment you begin seeing yourself as great, thinking you're the master, destruction is probably just around the corner.
That's the fatal trap of hubris. The Greeks knew it well. Is there a Chinese term for it?
Yes, a relevant concept is ping sha, which literally means something like to kill with praise or to ruin through excessive flattery. It speaks to how external inflation can lead to internal decay and eventual collapse. Success itself becomes the poison if it breeds arrogance.
And history is just littered with examples, isn't it? Systems, leaders, empires poisoned by their own achievements.
Absolutely. Take Napoleon Bonaparte. I mean, undeniably a brilliant military strategist, an incredible leader in many ways early on. But his staggering success clearly fueled his hubris.
To the point where he literally crowned himself emperor. Talk about seeing oneself as great.
That moment of self-declaration, that assertion of ultimate mastery, it signaled the internal fragility had fully set in. And that blinding hubris led him directly into the disastrous invasion of Russia. He basically challenged the vast, indifferent, non-mastering power of geography and climate. The small, unyielding Tao manifested as the Russian winter and was utterly shattered.
Nature didn't care about his crown.
Not one bit. Or think about Alexander the Great. His massive empire was essentially a monument to his singular genius. His incredible personal will, his absolute mastery, was built entirely on him.
So when that personal master died,
The entire structure just fractured almost immediately. It lacked that underlying non-dominating Tao, that shared ecosystem principle to hold it together. His greatness was real, but it couldn't sustain itself beyond the force of his individual ego that created it.
and there's a modern parable that seems to capture this perfectly. The indifference of the non-mastering Tao meeting human arrogance head-on. The Titanic.
Oh, the Titanic is the perfect tragic symbol. It was literally designed and marketed as the physical representation of human arrogance,
Mm.
the pinnacle of seeing oneself as great.
Unsinkable.
Exactly, unsingle, the ultimate claim of mastery over nature. It charged ahead, full speed, ignoring warnings, inflated by this belief in the absolute power of human technology,
Mm.
and it sailed right into.
The vast, indifferent, small power of nature. An iceberg. Just a silent piece of frozen water embodying the Tao.
The iceberg wasn't trying to be great. It claimed no merit for sinking the ship. It laid no claim to being master. It was just there, a simple result of the impersonal physical laws of nature.
And the Tao, in that form, claiming no merit, just effortlessly broke the ultimate symbol of human hubris.
It's a chilling lesson. The greater the boast, the louder the self-proclamation, the closer you are to that emptiness, that fragility.
Hmm.
The more you inflate your ego, the more vulnerable you become to destruction by the silent, non-contending, small forces of reality.
Okay, finally, let's bring this incredible wisdom right back down to the individual level. The Tao is broad, reaching left as well as right, and it's often called small. What does that tell us about where to find profound truth in our own lives?
It tells us that the most profound, the most universal truth isn't necessarily found in the big, glamorous, headline-grabbing moments or places. It's right here in the ordinary, the mundane, the seemingly lowly places of everyday life.
Because the Tao is immanent. It's not just out there in the cosmos, it's woven into the fabric of everything.
Exactly. It's not reserved for special people or special occasions, for temples or grand heroic acts. And this idea, this intuition that the great way is found in the small, it echoes throughout human culture, doesn't it? Reminding us to look closely at the seemingly insignificant.
Like the poet William Blake saying, "A world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wildflower."
Perfect example. The entire universe, that dynamic process, the flow, the interconnectedness, the buyu, it's all potentially present, perceivable, right there in the humble, ordinary object or moment, if we just pay attention. The great isn't separate from the small, they're fundamentally linked.
Or you think about the Romantic movement in the West. Wordsworth finding divinity in a field of daffodils.
Or Thoreau discovering cosmic laws just by sitting silently by Walden Pond, observing the woods. They were practicing that deep attention required to perceive the Tao flowing everywhere, left as well as right, in the least assuming corners of life. They found greatness by paying attention to the small, not by seeking to be great.
But maybe the most powerful, the most testing application of this wisdom comes from people who found it in the most extreme, the most lowly circumstances imaginable, like Viktor Frankl in the concentration camp.
Yes, stripped of absolutely everything, all external markers of status, achievement, greatness, completely incinerated, forced into the ultimate lowly place.
And yet, he found his ultimate meaning, his personal Tao, right there. Not in some grand external achievement, obviously.
No, he found it in the infinitely small internal conscious choice.
Hmm.
The choice to find purpose even in suffering. The choice to offer a kind word to another prisoner. The choice to hold on to the memory of love. He discovered the immense, unshakable capacity of human consciousness, that inner non-mastering spirit that can survive even when all external signs of greatness are gone.
The greatest act, the truly Taoist act, was found in that tiny internal decision to maintain meaning and connection despite everything.
Precisely. Finding the great way in the smallest, most fundamental acts of being human.
Wow, Chapter 34 has really unveiled a deeply counterintuitive and yet somehow ultimate truth, hasn't it? That real sustainable power isn't the loud, insistent trumpeting of the self, the constant assertion of mastery.
No, it comes from that silent, supportive, enabling strength we see in nature, the earth holding us up, the water nourishing us, the air letting us breathe. A power that enables, that nurtures, and yet, crucially, renounces mastery and possession.
We really have to internalize this ultimate paradox. It is because it never attempts itself to become great that it succeeds in becoming great. It feels like such a deep and urgent message for our time, doesn't it?
Yeah.
An age obsessed with self-promotion, with competition, with constantly needing to possess and display our achievements.
It really is. Whether you're aiming to be a leader or maybe just seeking a bit more inner peace and resilience in your own life, the fundamental lesson seems clear. Try somehow to relinquish that heart that wants to be great. Let go of the ego's desperate need for ownership and external acknowledgement.
The moment you can genuinely choose beyond, not to possess the outcome, not to tie your self-worth to the credit, that's when you tap into something unshakable, an unintentional greatness that arises naturally.
So maybe here's the provocative thought for you, the listener, to carry forward from today's deep dive. The next time you experience success, large or small, just try this experiment. Actively try to release that internal clinging, that heart that wants to be great. Don't just act modest on the outside. Try to consciously relinquish the feeling of possessing the achievement itself.
Just notice what that moment of conscious release feels like in your chest, in your mind. Can you find a different kind of strength there? A true, unshakable, achieved greatness that comes not from holding on, but from that profound act of letting go, of relinquishing the self.
That is the profound, lifelong challenge and invitation of Chapter 34.
Thank you for diving deep with us once again. We'll see you next time.